Hi there, and welcome to another edition of TokStocks, the podcast that provides Canadian listed small cap stocks for coverage for active investors. I'm your host, Keir Reynolds, and today we're lucky enough to be joined by Russell Starr, Head of Capital Markets at Defi Technologies. The trades on the NEO under the ticker DEFI. Defi. The stock's been what I'd say like a hot tamale here of late, obviously with what's going on in crypto, and that'd be great to welcome Russell and give us a deep dive on everything DeFi. How you doing, Russell?
I'm doing great, Keir. Thanks for having me on. I'll always love doing this because it's a great way to get a little bit more information about what's going on with the company and sort of where we're going and what our trajectory is.
Yeah, excellent. I think when we've started talking about doing this, it took a little bit of time to organize. No fault of yours, but I think your stock's up some 300% since then. So definitely timely to sort of have you on. Really interesting stuff going on, and obviously with the research I've kind of done on your company, I think it's very topical in terms of the regulatory environment and whatnot. But before we kind of unpack all that, maybe you could share a little bit about who you are and your background.
Sure. A bit of a circuitous route, but I find that's becoming more and more common. Undergrad, 2 master's degrees, started a PhD in econometrics, managed to land a job on the trading floor at RBC. So I quit my PhD, worked on basically trading floors for the last 20 years after that, or 15 years. Salesperson, institutional trader, corporate finance. One of my clients introduced me to a couple of guys who were starting a firm called Echelon. I jumped in, I put a lot of money into it, and lo and behold, you've got Echelon now merging with PI. But I don't know, sort of like I was saying, 15 years into it, I got a bit frustrated with just being an intermediary. I actually wanted to try and create value. So I joined one of the companies that I was banking, a company called Caden Resources. We sold that to Agnico. And then, people look at me and they view me as a little bit of a precious metals or gold bug, but really, I don't really think of it that way. I have a background in economics. I guess technically I'd be an economist. And I saw what was going on in the world, and I tried to position myself as aggressively as possible in both the crypto and the gold space, because I think fiat currencies are in a lot of trouble.
Hey, excellent. Yeah, I remember coming across your name there with Caden. I've known Ivan Dean
there you go.
for years, and I was working on a little project called Anapaula in Guerrero there with New Strike Capital. And you
Richard,
guys were sort of
he and I were good buddies. Richard Whittle,
yeah, that's right. Richard was amazing to work with, and I've had two amazing projects with him. Both of them resulted in exits, and super fun guy. But
congrats.
Anyways, it's pretty common. It's hard to be grown up and been a true expert sort of in crypto. It's still fairly new. So I do find you kind of have to have been smart in other sort of industries to really sort of understand some of the needs that this new burgeoning industry sort of needs. And I guess one of those with some of the experience you've talked about of your background is you've obviously had to deal with regulatory sort of environments and businesses that require a lot of regulation, whether it's mining or financial services. So you kind of, I guess it's a good segue. Crypto sectors up until recently has been a bit of a beat up sector with all the regulatory uncertainty and some of the outright scams and rug pulls that we've kind of seen in NFT land and things like that. It's kind of been a bit out of favor, but it's oftentimes like these where you can find tremendous upside and when regulation starts to get sorted out. We've sort of seen that in some other industries. Maybe you could start off by sort of explaining what is decentralized finance? We hear that term thrown around a lot. Why is it important, and what is it?
The analogy I always use is, real estate is something that everybody's pretty familiar with. Imagine a world where you don't need a real estate agent, where you can actually communicate with house A or house B or buyer or seller A or B, and you completely disintermediate the intermediary. Another one is wires, bank wires. Like, why on earth do we pay our bank, $500 to send money to a different country or a different person? The reality is that can be done freely and easily using decentralized finance. So DeFi, decentralized finance, and really the crypto ecosystem is largely created to get away from what I would view as a banking model, which is ever so slowly failing and just not executing the way it should be. Currencies are losing their value. You see gold hitting the moon. You see crypto, in my opinion, it's going to retest new highs. And DeFi and the blockchain and crypto are all created to allow people to execute and live better lives without having to rely on, call it the US dollar or the Canadian dollar or a bank to send money. So, I mean, that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, but truly that's what it is.
Yeah, excellent. That's a great segue into maybe giving a good overview on what Defi Technologies is all about, what its mission is, and how it participates in this decentralized finance
Sure.
sector.
So I'm going to start with the two founders just because it's pretty important. So Ollie Russi Newton, Olivier, whom you and I were talking about earlier, great guy. He created Hive Blockchain, and his view was he'd had so many people coming to him saying, how do I buy this Ethereum, this Ether, this whatever? Everybody had no fundamental understanding, similar to Bitcoin. How do I get one of these? And so he created Hive Blockchain so that people could get exposure to the Ethereum market through a traditional listed equity. That obviously did very well, but not surprisingly, just so everyone's aware, I mean, that was a moonshot to $7, all the way back down to 8-7 cents, and then all the way back up to $5, right? Like none of these are simple trades that only go one direction. There's always inherent risk. But as you can tell, a bid Bitcoin market is sort of the high tide rising all boats. The other partner, Johan Wattenstrom, created a company called XBT Provider, which was bought and became CoinShares. And so the two of them got together and said, look, we created Hive, we created CoinShares, but how do we get everybody exposure to not just Bitcoin and Ethereum, but the entire ecosystem? And so what we do is we take Solana, Matic, take your pick, all these DeFi decentralized tokens. We wrap them in what's called an ETP, exchange traded product. And for everyone here, that's effectively an ETF. And we list them on traditional listed exchanges so that you and I, instead of having to go, into really the sector that's probably faced the most criticism and scrutiny, and that is these unregulated trading platforms, which FTX is infamous now. We obviate from that. We allow people, like, you want to buy a Solana, you can buy it as a traditional listed equity, an ETF. This is like as simple a business model as you can get. You think BlackRock iShares, Horizons beta funds, that's what we do. North America has been a nightmare. The regulators in Canada, I think, just hate crypto because in US they hate crypto. But the reality is that everywhere else in the world, this industry is going nuts. And so we offer all of these. We now have 13 or 14 ETPs, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polkadot, Cardano. I mean, you can go on and just look on our website. We just launched XRP, Ripple, and we're doing an ICP, which is a foundation token, which we've just released in Europe, and you can buy them obviously through Bloomberg or through your broker dealer. But again, it's just to allow people to get exposure to this extremely compelling, groundbreaking, and quite frankly, revolutionary ecosystem that most people can't get exposure to with these really complicated, unregulated exchanges.
Yeah, I know from personal experience, it's been a bit of a hot mess. Had a couple of accounts where like the firm actually like went out of business.
Yep.
And that's with me doing a lot of research, trying to look at, well, who's sort of regulated, who's sort of best positioned in sort of like a Canadian market. Again, with regulation kind of coming in after firms are already established.
Yep.
I guess it depends if they have deep enough pockets, enough users, and it's like worthwhile for them. So
Yep.
it's definitely been one of those places where it's like, well, how do you put serious money to work if you're concerned about being able to sleep at night,
Yep.
wondering if your money's safe or if they're going to call you or shoot you an email and tell you that you've got to move all your stuff. And then where do you move to? It's definitely been, if you look at what's been going on in sort of, I guess, the US, which is kind of, I guess, the leader, they've definitely been, I guess there's been some controversy whether these are investments or commodity type
Yep.
exchange products. I guess there's been a lot of sort of enforcement and fines trying to block sort of on-roads onto these things. So it sounds
Yep.
like you've got a very compliant traditional sort of product that provides an easy on-road for people that want exposure to the sector. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, you would. I mean, I would still say that the regulators are not fond of us in North America. And that's just, look, if you go and you listen to some of the testimony from Gensler in the US, really what it comes down to and their whole sort of hate for this industry is, well, it's detrimental to the US dollar. Well, printing trillions of dollars is detrimental to the US dollar, but I don't see you doing anything to the Fed. So, recently you've seen them lose multiple cases and they're continuing to get their hands slapped. And it's unfortunate because the US could have been the center, and quite frankly, Canada. Like Hive was started in Canada, Galaxy trades on the Toronto Stock Exchange. We were started in Canada. We could have had regulators and an industry that embraced this and helped revolutionize and become a center of intelligence and creativity. But no, instead our regulators chose a sort of pretty draconian way of looking at this. But the reality is, we believe that we are perfectly positioned to offer this incredibly compelling ecosystem, and that being blockchain, crypto, DeFi, however you want to call it. But we have a way of offering it to the community, fully cleared by prospectus. Every client is KYC'd. You're completely getting away from that whole sort of toxic Sam Bankman-Fried FTX negativity, and you're doing it in a compliant way, which, in my opinion, is what the regulators should be embracing. And so, you were commenting on our stock doing very well recently, but the reality is, the last time we were almost at this level of AUM, 400 million, we were trading at close to $4. We're trading at 50 cents right now. We're cruising on 400 million in AUM. We have triple the amount of products, and if you saw our press release today, we're about to launch another 20, and yet we're far cheaper than we ever would have been historically. So, my view is yes, we've run quite a bit, but if you look at this in context of how much revenue we're generating, how much trading revenue we're generating, how much staking revenue we're generating. Like if you were just to isolate our Solana product alone, which has been our fastest growing product, it's now our biggest product. And that occurred in the last 6 months, by the way. It was almost like 30, 40, 50 million of interest into our Solana product in Europe. That's yielding about 7-8% right now. We could theoretically, just on the AUM we have, do close to 8 million in revenue just on our Solana products. So, I think we're just at the beginning. I think there's a ton of opportunity for investors to make some really incredible gains. Obviously, that's, you got to be careful how you position this for investors.
Sure.
There are risks. That's a forward-looking statement, but truly, if you just look at our current AUM and the way we generate revenue, and the way we generate revenue is really simple. We stake our assets or we lend them. We have trading revenues because you can actually make quite a bit of money off of trading in this industry still, because it's kind of the way the equity markets were 2 decades ago, where you were taking 5 to 10 cents per share of spread.
Right.
and then we manage nodes. And then, of course, we have one other business sector, which is our sort of, if we see a great opportunity, Anthony Pompliano is an advisor. If we see a really incredible opportunity in like Luxor or 3IQ, we made an investment in 3IQ. We'll put 100 grand into it. We're not blowing our brains out, but often in these bull runs, those are 10 baggers. And so, we have this incredibly robust portfolio, 6.6% in SEBA Bank, which is one of the only banks left standing in Europe. And then of various other investments. And all of that's probably worth 50, 60 million bucks right now. But our real core business is our ETP AUM accumulation business. And that's where I see the future of this company being.
So maybe you could just break down, I think you have three distinct sort of categories or divisions.
Yep.
You've got Valor Asset Management, you've got Defi Ventures, and you've got Defi Infrastructure. You kind of explained a bit about that, but maybe you could just sort of pop some of those active businesses that you talked about into those three divisions, just so we can get a good understanding.
So all the ETPs, ETFs, whatever you want to call them, it's just more common in Europe to call it an exchange traded product, and that's where the bulk of all of our trading occurs. Actually, all of it. Valor Asset Management is all of those ETPs. So when I talk to you about our AUM being close to 400 million or 380 million, I don't know where it is as of close today, but it's probably higher, maybe 380, 400. That's the Valor brand.
Right.
DeFi Ventures is all of those investments I told you about, whether it's Luxor, 3IQ, SEBA Bank. That's where all of that resides. And then DeFi Infrastructure is node management. And nodes have kind of, there was a period of I don't know, probably 5 years where nodes were generating, when you manage one of them, up to $1 to $2 million in revenue. And that's just your ticking off. I try to keep this as simple as possible, by the way.
I was going to ask, what is node management?
Well, you're basically affirming a transaction on the blockchain. Okay. So when you have enough Polkadot or Cardano, you can petition to run a node, which is where you affirm or decline a transaction that's trying to be executed on that rail, basically. And people were making $1 to $2 million off of node management for Cardano, Polkadot, whatever, take your pick. And we do that as a tertiary business, but it's, look, really, to simplify our business model, our all-in costs are 5 or 6 million US on let's use 400 million. On 400 million in AUM, we'll generate about 40 million, 35, 40 million bucks in revenue. Less our costs, which is about 5 or 6. That's a very robust business model. Wow. If you're making anything in your DeFi Ventures or in your node management, that's just gravy. But the holy grail for us is to get to $1 billion. At $1 billion, we're making real money. Like that's 80, 90 million bucks in revenue, less, 5, 6 million in costs. And by the way, our costs don't scale with our AUM. This is a very simple business to manage. So, we unleash another 20 products this year. I'm extremely confident with Bitcoin certainly looking, I would say it's going to test new highs. I'm extremely confident we get to $1 billion in AUM in this next fiscal year. That's our market cap right now is what we'll make in revenue and close to what we'll make in profits.
Wow, there you go. That's quite the pitch. So you're kind of, you touched on it before. You're a bit of like a mining sort of gold bug. Yep. Obviously working with some individuals that are synonymous with the sector. Do you sort of feel that Bitcoin is continuing to kind of be that digital gold, and is that one of the reasons why you sort of have focused a bit more on this sector?
Yeah, and I don't want to say I'm risk averse, because the junior sector in and of itself is a risky sector, but if you look at DeFi is a really diversified way of playing the entire crypto ecosystem, because we've got 14 products, I think right now. We launch another 20. You're looking at 34 products, various tokens of of different, form, versus, Cardano or Polkadot, Chainlink, whatever. But as you're accumulating AUM, we never thought we'd see Solana being our top product, but here we are. Solana is actually higher than Bitcoin now in terms of our portfolio. So it's a great way of diversifying that play. On the gold side, I have various gold investments. I am a big believer in the EV theme as well, but that's largely because you want to take sort of a macro look at the world, and the world is in trouble. I mean, you've got U.S. ships being attacked by Houthis. You've got the U.S. dollar being destroyed by the Fed. I mean, I don't know any business that you can run with trillions of dollars of debt. And I mean, I can't even remember what the last data point was in terms of what they're paying daily in terms of interest, but it's
right.
I think it's like $1 billion. It's $1 billion a day or something like that. And so where do you want to put your money? And I always caveat this because a lot of my friends give me grief, but I've been wrong for 5 years. Tech has been on a 5-year bull run while the U.S. has been destroying their currency. And to a certain extent, that has to do with the fact that the U.S. dollar is the de facto denomination of settlement for every commodity in the world. But you're seeing that change right now, right? You've got the Petro Yuan, or you've got the BRICS that are suggesting crypto as a form of settlement. So that's why I've embraced the two of them. And I remember a taxi driver saying to me once when I was in crypto, he's like, "I can't give my wife a Bitcoin for her anniversary," and I'm like, well, if she's smart, she'd probably take a Bitcoin over a gold ring, but she probably doesn't know that. But I get it. I get it. She probably wants the gold ring, but you see these videos of people walking around the U.S. saying, would you like an ounce of Canadian gold? And they're like, "Oh, we don't take Canadian dollars," but they don't realize that that's $2,000 US.
Right.
So there's a real education process that's going on. Obviously, doing interviews like this helps. And some people are going to laugh at me and they're going to stay long their Tesla. But for all those people who are long their Tesla, a lot of those people don't understand that they don't have a secure supply of nickel or lithium. Where's that going to come from? Where are all of these chips that require rare earths going to come from when China controls the entire rare earth market? So you have to sort of think a little bit outside the box. And one of the most legendary investors in the world, Eric Sprott, he was long gold for a decade before it moved. And when it moved, he became one of the most famous investors in the world. And that's not to say I'm going to be that, but I really believe we're in one of those rare opportunities to get into a space like crypto. You've got the halving coming. You've got two of the largest fund management companies in the world, BlackRock and Fidelity, petitioning to launch their own Bitcoin ETFs. That's a tremendous amount of buying or bids for an ecosystem that's trading at $40,000 right now, that I think could easily go to 65, 70, 100,000, 150. And if you want to be along for that ride, you've either got to figure out a way to buy a Bitcoin in a wallet on a non-traditional exchange, or you can buy our Bitcoin Zero product, which is listed on an equity market. It tracks Bitcoin perfectly. There's no tracking error. And that's one way of doing it as well. And it's the more simplistic way. It's the way that, my grandmother or my mother would do it, right? So
right. And I guess that's a good opportunity. So in terms of these exchange traded products, the ETPs, what exchanges do they trade on?
So we have them denominated to a large extent in euros and in Swedish kroner. And a lot of people ask why. And obviously I would have scratched my head at that point as well. But the reality is that the SEC and the Canadian regulators have made this such a demonized space in North America that not a lot of people trade it or want to trade it or even look into trading it. Now that's changing a bit with the SEC losing and Gensler getting his hand slapped pretty substantially. But But what we've realized is we happen to be in the cherry of all markets, which is Scandinavia. And I think the reason why that is the market to be in currently is because that's where CoinShares was started. That's where XBT Provider was started. And a lot of people are comfortable with that as a vehicle to get exposure to this space. So, I mean, technically we can trade, like, capital markets are global markets now. You can go on Bloomberg, you can put in our Polkadot, our Cardano, our Bitcoin or Ethereum. You're gonna see an ISIN, you're going to see a QSIP, the European version of a QSIP, and you can buy that. But it just hasn't been embraced or adopted the way it has in Europe, here in North America. And I also think it has a little bit to do with the fact that Grayscale was always trading at such a discount. Right. So people sort of have a negative impression, but they don't realize we have zero tracking error. Our Bitcoin zero, our Ethereum zero, we charge no management fees. So it's the equivalent of just going in and buying Bitcoin, obviously bid-ask spread, but picking it up and basically getting exposure to that infrastructure. Excuse me, sorry.
No problem. That's all right.
But
okay.
Does that answer your question?
in terms of an investor being able to, is there like any sort of liquidity on these products? If somebody, wants to buy and then wants to sell, is there an ability to sort of like exit a position?
Absolutely. There's always a bid. There's always an ask. You're never going to get in a market where you're like, oh man, I have no exit, which is what happened with Grayscale, right? Like you could get in, but you couldn't get out. It was a closed-end fund, and then it was trading at a substantial discount, which is subsequently, in fairness to Grayscale, it subsequently disappeared because they, along with BlackRock and Fidelity, have received, in my opinion, permission. We just don't know the date at which they'll become ETFs. But yeah, we have tremendous liquidity on our products. Like I was saying, there was a period, I wish I'd been smart enough to know what was going on. Solana just took off. And someone was buying a ton of our Solana product, and the liquidity was there. We make markets for our products, but there's also inherent liquidity elsewhere. So you're never, ever going to get stuck being long one of our Bitcoin products or Ethereum. You'll always see a bid, and it's a reasonable bid. It's the average, I believe, of the 10 best bids and the average of the 10 best offers. So you're getting a good market for those products.
Excellent. Thanks for the overview on that. I see that one of your venture portfolio companies, SEBA Bank, which you've mentioned a couple times here, they recently received a license from Hong Kong Security and Futures Commission. What does this sort of like mean for you as a company?
So we're long 6.6% of SEBA Bank. It's about a $40 to $50 million valuation in terms of what that's worth. We always mark to market on the last trade because it's a private investment. But the reality is, my own personal opinion again, and everything I say, everybody, this is my personal opinion. These are not, going to happen with certainty. I always have to make sure that that's said. But as Bitcoin goes higher, you saw Silvergate go to zero. You saw SVB go to zero. This is one of the only legitimate banks, full banking license. The Swiss take their banking very seriously. It's located in Switzerland. It's one of the last bastions of security in a bank format in the world. So my opinion is SEBA's probably worth more. And they just rebranded themselves today, I think, actually. We believed that making that investment was a really sensible thing because we have a view on the market just the way you do. I wouldn't be involved in this company. I wouldn't be buying millions of shares of this company if I didn't think it was going higher. I think this industry is and the timing for investment in this industry is better than it's ever been right now because you had this negative regulatory perspective in the US, which is slowly getting slapped away, right? Like the courts are legitimately slapping the SEC's hands, saying you're bad. What you're doing is not right. You have that. You have these ETFs that are going to be launched. You have the halving. You have the US dollar crumbling. You have an economy where interest rates are likely going lower. All of these are risk on data points for people to get comfortable buying into this space. And, like you've got multitudes of options. You've got WonderFi out there. You've got CoinShares. You've got Riot. No one really does what we do. WonderFi is exchanges. Tokens.com was tokens. We've just taken this sort of, I don't want to call it the turtle's perspective versus the hare, but we've taken this really methodical perspective that ultimately this industry is going to become a friendly industry from a regulatory perspective, and that we are the most friendly as a company from a regulatory perspective. And so to me, that's a great position to be in a world where Bitcoin's going bid, Ethereum's going bid. Regulators are being forced by the courts to be more pro crypto, and the US dollar, as we can all see, is falling off a cliff. So what was it? Warren Buffett said, never bet against the US dollar. Well, if interest rates are going lower, I'm going to bet against the US dollar. And if they've got that much debt, and this is a great look, I've said it numerous times on this interview. SEBA Bank, great asset to have in our portfolio. 3iQ, great asset to have. Luxor, we have a bunch of great assets or tokens or whatever you want to call it, investments in our DeFi ventures portfolio. We bought the 3iQ for I think about 100,000, and we're going to sell it for about 1.1 or 1.2 because they just got taken out by an Asian entity. And if I can sort of, I don't know, preach from up high right now, Canada and the US had a world-class opportunity to be leaders in this space, and they dropped the ball. Europe, Asia have embraced this wholeheartedly. We are seeing incredible value creation in Europe from our products, and that's where they're listed. Would we love to list our products in North America? Absolutely. But guess who stands in our way? The regulators. So, there will be a world where all our products will be listed, just the way Horizon's beta funds had, double the Toronto Stock Exchange. That's really all we are. We're a Horizon's beta funds. It's just
right. So right now, would you say your products are more focused to European based sort of investors? Yes, I know if you're fairly sophisticated, anybody could buy them, but is that largely your sort of like market? And would you see any of that sort of like market opportunity affected by Fidelity or BlackRock when they're approved?
No, see, it's if there was some stats I was being pitched the other day. If literally you took 1% of the gold market and you invested it in the Bitcoin market, Bitcoin would be 150,000 or some exorbitant number, if not higher.
Right.
So
it's underinvested, is what you're saying.
It's underinvested in an ecosystem where and an environment where the courts are basically stepping in, slapping the SEC's hands and saying, look, just because this is competition for the US dollar doesn't mean it isn't a great product that investors shouldn't have exposure to. So, I mean, do I think that BlackRock or Fidelity or ARK is going to cannibalize any of our products? No, I think what it's going to do is put a massive bid in the market. I think it's going to bring investors who never, ever thought of this as an investment to the market. It's going to institutionalize the market. You're going to see institutions coming to it. And as a result, you're going to see, I think, a major flow of funds into entities such as DeFi as the high tide rises and sort of floats all boats.
Does DeFi through any of its entities have its own token, like its own coin?
No. Okay. And honestly, the tokenization, tokens.com was a really interesting company. It just so happens that part of the industry has kind of gone no bid, right? Like, all of these NFTs are trading at 1/10 of what they were during that last bull run. Doesn't mean it's not going to go bid again. I just think that we're we're in that real sweet spot to take advantage of the way this market is going, right?
Right.
I think if you were to really look at all of the frauds that have occurred, the vast majority of them have been on an exchange basis, Binance, FTX.
Right.
That's not what we
Sometimes
are.
where they're, I would say sometimes where they're using their own token
Yeah.
to sort of prop up some valuation in
Yeah.
terms of like assets while maybe trading with customer assets. So
Yeah, no. Look, that I mean, we've seen obviously Voyager. It was a market darling and then punished, but still a great concept. I just think the way we're doing it satisfies all of those naysayers, right? Like our products are cleared by prospectus, so the regulators are already on side with our products. If you want to buy it, our clients are already KYC'd. Well, a lot of clients aren't KYC'd in these non-traditional exchanges. FTX was at one point the biggest market darling, and it turned out to be a scam. Well, we can't scam our products, right? We're looking at these tokens that have tremendous liquidity, that have interest from a global audience, and we're simply just making them available to investors on a traditional exchange. We're not de facto saying this token's amazing. We're just simply offering an ETF on it, right? Like no different. Like again, I use the Horizon beta funds. Like there was a time just recently where oil was trading for $. This was about 3-4 years
yes,
ago, right?
we should
You
have
had
we
to
should
be,
have been paid to accept some deliveries, shouldn't we?
yeah, yeah. Was an ETF, an oil ETF, a scam? No, it just look, the market is inefficient. If the market was efficient, none of us would ever make money. It's that market inefficiently that allows someone to buy a share of DeFi at 50 cents and sell it at $1.50 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or wherever I think it's going. And I do think it's going much higher, just because what we've been talking about here is we are the traditional regulated way of allowing people to play this incredibly compelling ecosystem that is disintermediating banks. It is disintermediating middle people. There's a reason for that. They're not needed. They're costing you money, and this ecosystem tries to save you money. Is that a threat to the US dollar and the Canadian dollar? Absolutely. But why shouldn't there be competition? Why shouldn't the Bank of Canada and the Fed and our governments be forced to act more responsibly? That's what
Competition
this
usually breeds more competitiveness,
efficiency.
right?
Yeah, yeah, and so now, like, you're getting, gold to me is the ultimate. Is the world and are the banks acting prudently? Gold's at all-time highs. It was crazy this weekend. I didn't see one article in the Globe on gold being at all-time highs. Now, we're Canadian, so I read the Globe and Mail, but Barron's was talking about it, and you're seeing some of the investment banks in the U.S. talking about it. They're also, all of them, talking about Bitcoin at 18-month highs. And I just, can Bitcoin go lower? Absolutely. Does it have the possibility to retest 32,000? Absolutely. But if one of those ETFs gets approved here in the next 3, 4, 5 weeks, I think your balance of probability or your weighted probability is higher, not lower.
Excellent. So maybe you could we'll just sort of touch on a couple of other things in terms of DeFi. It sounds like it's got fairly high insider ownership. Do
Yep.
you could you give us a bit of understanding in terms of how the company was sort of financed and who owns it?
Look, Ollie owns a big position. I own a big position. Johan owns a big position. I always say to people, don't buy companies unless management owns them, right? Like if management owns, 1% of the company, they're probably not executing in your best interest. So you want to see management own. The reality is, look, we were suffering. This industry went crazy bid and then no bid. And when Bitcoin was trading around 18 or 16, people were calling for the end of Bitcoin. For the first time ever, I just don't see that as a possibility because of the ETFs that are they've already been theoretically approved. We're just waiting for final approval. I don't see a world where a Bitcoin price of zero is a possibility anymore. So, do you look? It comes down to what you believe in, right? A lot of people make investments based on what their thesis is moving forward, but no, I look. We're in the world we're in. We have to manage our portfolios as sensibly as possible moving forward. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's.
Well, why don't we roll into what's a typical day in your role look like, and what does head of capital markets do specifically for the company? I know most of the founders and I guess a lot of the operations would be overseas.
Yep.
You're based here in North America. The company's traded on the NEO exchange, which is a Canadian sort of North American kind of situation. Yes, I guess it does offer some global expansion, but what's a typical day look like for you?
Talking to people like you. And it's funny, 6 months ago, no one wanted to talk to us. And now all of a sudden it's just exploded. Right. And that's as a result of a bid crypto market. My job predominantly is to help Ollie any way I can, Johan any way I can. Idea generation for new products. Like we are looking at not just being crypto blockchain focused. We're thinking about AI. Like, could you offer a quantum ETP? Could you offer an AI ETP? Absolutely. Has anybody ever done that? No. We're looking at that. Lithium and uranium as potential ETPs. We want to be on the cutting edge. So you're not going to see us do a Dow Jones or a TSX ETP. That just doesn't make sense from our
Sure.
sort of thought process. But so creation of ideas. But really, my job is to meet as many people as possible, to travel everywhere and anywhere, and try to tell people about the opportunity, because it is rare, in my opinion, that you see opportunities like what copper, gold, crypto are presenting to people right now. I was reading an article just last week. The concentration of investment in 7 stocks has never been higher. Everyone is long the same 7 stocks, and none of them are Canadian. I'm just telling you that. And none of them are commodities or commodity based, and none of them are crypto based. And yet the evolution of the world is gravitating towards higher gold, higher commodity prices,
right?
Crypto going bid. So I
maybe
run around.
We should own some. Maybe we should own some assets, hard assets, and some other forms of currency rather than fiat.
Exactly. Like, what a novel thought, and yet here it is, and it's being offered to you, and my job is to make as many people aware of it as possible.
Hey, great. And maybe you could cover what are some 6 and 12 month sort of catalysts. Again, don't get into anything specific that would be forward looking and hasn't been disclosed, but just the types of things that we should sort of watch for that would indicate that the company's executing on its strategy.
Yeah. So when we last tested, call it 450 million in AUM, we only had 4 or 5 products. We're at 400 million ish in AUM with 13 or 14 products. We're going to be launching another 20 products, and it might be 17 and it might be 25, but to my point earlier, we're looking at really intriguing opportunities like an AI or a quantum computing ETP. But you're going to see, us continue to issue ETPs on these really cool, like Chainlink or just one of these top sort of blockchain protocols that are sitting out there. We're hopefully going to do at least 20 of those next year. That's going to be, to me, the major data points you want to follow. But I also would be remiss if I didn't say, look, we're looking at really interesting JV opportunities globally. Look, it's not easy to get into this industry. BlackRock built iShares by buying people like us in the infrastructure that they wanted to pursue. we really truly believe that if we can continue to execute the way we're executing, someone bigger is going to come to us and basically say, it's a heck of a lot easier buying you than it is doing another 33 ETPs ourselves. Plus, we don't know how to do it. Oh, and by the way, everybody always asks me what our competitive advantage is. Well, we spent about 3 years with regulators getting the permission to stake or lend all of our assets. Not everybody can do that. In the US, you can't do that. So more products,
that's a
JVs.
That's a pretty unique opportunity. That's probably how you a large source of revenue if you're offering zero sort of fee ETP products. I guess you need the other side of it, and that's the ability to.
Well, we also we also have a trading desk, so we can execute. Mm-hmm. And you instead of giving your spread to someone else who isn't within the entity itself, we capture that, and all of those numbers come together to equal about 10%. So, like I said, if we can get to $1 billion in AUM, even if it's only 7% yield on that, and it's not yield that we'd pay out, it would be revenue. Yes. But that's 70 million in revenue. And like I said, we don't have to hire another 20 people to get there. We just have the people we have. So 5-6 million in costs, 65 million in profit. That's pretty bloody compelling in a market that certainly looks like it's trending higher. Yeah.
So you'd be, I guess, to sort of summarize, investing into DeFi sort of being an early investor into like a Horizons or something like that established a whole new category several years ago for some of us with the ETF. You've got the ETP sort of program that and there may be some expansion beyond even crypto with some of those products.
Always cutting edge, but yes.
Hey, very cool. A question I like to ask everybody: what are the top 3 reasons to consider investing in Defi Technologies today?
Well, the simple and most topical and easy answer is the last time we had this amount of AUM, we were trading at $3 or $4. So here we are trading at, 50 cents today, with a more diversified portfolio, with a robust venture portfolio, and this node business. So you get a more diversified way of trading what we were before at, call it 1/8 the market cap. So huge potential upside. Number 2 would be really there's no one else doing what we're doing. There was a company named Valkyrie in the US that just got acquired by CoinShares in a weird acquisition. It's like a year acquisition based off 6 months of hurdles. But truly, I think we're going to be on many people's radar screens, especially once these ETFs get launched, because we've already got that infrastructure, and hopefully we'll have 20, 30, 40 products at that time. Obviously, I've got to get the market moving even better, because I still believe we're drastically undervalued for the amount of money we're making. And the third one is, look, you can buy Bitcoin, you can buy Ethereum, you can buy Solana, but you have a direct single stock exposure to the risk of that underlying one entity. With us, you get, however many ETPs we have. It's a very diversified way of playing the entire ecosystem in the crypto space. So there's your 3.
And I guess because you're publicly traded, it's a highly regulated way to get sort of synthetic exposure to crypto, which, again, if there's any sort of concerns around individual regulatory sort of risk of like my actual dollars, well, you can invest into a neo-listed stock, which has to be audited and has to file financials and has to be operates in a highly regulated environment itself. So that's probably a pretty good reason for me, for sure, in a complex world. Excellent. Well, hey, thank you, Russell. I really appreciate you sharing some valuable insights and a bit of a background on the company. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
Look, my view is we're going to have an update call in a quarter or 6 months. My view is I think all of us will be looking and wishing we'd bought more in the next 6 months. I've been pouring my own capital into buying it. I have a lot of friends who are buying it, family who are buying it. I think this is one of the most intriguing opportunities, both from a macro perspective and a micro perspective, to get long the junior space and some of these nascent opportunities, which is the crypto universe, the gold universe, commodities. I think people are going to be very, very happy if they pay attention to this interview and speak to us in 6 months.